I honestly feel like one of the most overlooked struggles about letting go is finding the courage and finding the strength to actually want to move forward. It's so easy to go through a breakup, go through a season of having to lose a person, and you just essentially start drowning in your pain. You start drowning in your feelings, essentially. I remember for myself, I was going through a little situationship and I ended up losing a person and I lost all track of myself. I felt like I completely lost myself. I didn't know what to do with my life. Every day I was waking up and I was just trying to game my life away. I was trying to game my thoughts away. I was just constantly trying to be distracted. But it was like once that game went off, I was just sitting there on my bed and I was just essentially drowning in negative thoughts. I was just constantly wondering why. I was constantly wondering what I did wrong. I was constantly just overthinking and living in the past. And I know for a long time, for a good 2-3 months, I was just sitting there sad. I was just sitting there in my feelings because I just didn't know what to do. And I didn't want to move forward because I was holding on to hope. I thought I could have fixed things. I was so caught up in why things turned out the way in which they did. I didn't know how she felt about me, and it made me question who I was as a person and my worth and all that stuff. And I just know what it's like to be in a place where you're constantly just stuck in your pain. And it's so easy to be like that because you have no motivation to do anything else. At the time I was in community college or whatever. I think I was like 19 years old or whatever. And so I know for a fact then I was in community college. I wasn't really working. And so I didn't have any goals. I didn't have anything to look forward to in life. That relationship essentially was my life. It was the biggest thing I had going on in my life. I was looking forward every day to talking to the person, to seeing the person. And so that was just all I had going on. And it's so easy to get caught up in that place and get caught up in that pain. But it was like one day I realized I got to do something with my life. I got to start moving forward. Even if you don't have the motivation to do so, you just need to get started. I feel like in life, in any area of life, the hardest part will always be getting started. The hardest part will actually always be making the decision to start letting go, making the decision to start moving forward, making the decision to start doing something with yourself and, start trying to go after a goal, whatever it might be. And so for myself, it was, I had to sit there with myself and be like, what am I going to do? I can't allow myself to be at this rock bottom place or point forever. I can't allow myself to be sad forever, and I can't allow somebody else's decisions towards me to have this type of effect over me, to where every time somebody leaves my life, every time somebody decides to break up with me, I don't want to allow myself to lose myself. I don't want it to be the end all be all of my life to where it makes me sad and leaves me powerless essentially in my own life for a long period of time. And so I truly had to ask myself, what am I going to do to start moving forward? And so for myself, I started making new goals. I started actually pursuing different interests that I had interest in, but, I never took action on. We say things like, oh, I would want to do that, or I might want to look into that. But I actually, looked into those things. I actually started learning them. And so personally for myself, it was graphic design. And so I started pursuing graphic design a little bit and just really learning, like practicing on my own, doing my own stuff in the computer. And then even just moving around. Again, it's so easy to just sit in your pain. It's so easy to just sit there and drown watching Netflix, or again, just looking at old text messages or stalking their story or whatever. Like, it's so easy to fall into that trap, but you have to make yourself move. It's so easy, again, to just stay still. You got to make yourself get up and move. For myself, I like going on runs. I like going to the gym. Like, you got to do something to where you essentially have your focus on something other than the negative parts, negative thing that is going on in your life. Again, that's not the only thing that's going on in your life, but when we're going through it and we're feeling that pain and we're feeling the emotions, it feels like, oh, this breakup or this loss is all I had going for myself in life, and this is all that I have going on in life, and there's nothing to look forward to, there's nothing positive going on, and my life is just terrible. Essentially, my life is just full of negativity. I feel like a big part for me with finding motivation, or just, again, gaining my confidence again. It can make you lose a lot of confidence when you lose a person, because you're asking questions like, oh, is this the best that it gets? Where, am I ever going to be in a relationship again? Is anybody ever going to be interested in me again? Am I lovable? Am I good enough? Like, you start asking different questions. But I feel like when I changed my perspective on the relationship, when I was seeing how it was necessary, when I was seeing how it was growing me, when I was seeing how, I was going to build myself, when I was seeing how, basically just forming a positive perspective around it, what was it teaching me? What was, God's purpose for taking me through it? I feel like that's when I actually started to, see the positives in it, start to appreciate the fact that I went through it, seeing how it was building me into a better version of myself and how I was just going to grow from this situation moving forward. I stopped holding on to the past. I stopped needing an answer to certain whys and just like understanding some people, aren't for me. Some people aren't going to see my value. Some people aren't going to match the words in which they give me. Not everybody's going to be who they say they are. And, learning to let go with that, let go of that, learning to come to terms with that and find acceptance in that. And I feel like a big motivation for myself was also just changing my mindset, allowing that pain to essentially become a purpose, or allowing that pain to become an energy that I put into other things. I feel like, again, for a long time, I just had all this stuff built up within me. I had a lot of just energy within myself. And so I literally just started putting that into myself. I started putting that into the gym. I started putting that into my business at the time. I started just putting it into learning and reading and just, developing my mindset, developing my perspective on the world, and making certain changes within myself so that, again, I wasn't living in the past for the rest of my life or for longer than I needed to. And I know all of this is kind of easier said than done, but it truly is a day-to-day process. It's something that has to become a lifestyle of you essentially replacing the old life in which you live. It's so easy to get comfortable in a certain person always being in your life, someone always being in your routine, having someone to always constantly talk to. And it's like the only way to truly let go of that is to start building something new. I've given this analogy before where it's like you essentially have this tower or this building within your heart or just within yourself, and essentially a breakup or them letting go is just the building collapsing. And so you have all this debris and you have this area that's just full of mess. It's just full of negativity. It's full of dirt. It's just, it's not a pleasant sight or whatever. And it's like, until we start to clean that up, and until we start to pick up the pieces and throw them away and let go of them and start building something new, that debris will just sit there forever. And it will just, forever be full. Our life, that area of our life will forever just be full of pain. It will forever be full of the past, the memories in it, how that person treated us, how that person made us feel and stuff like that. And we'll constantly just be holding on to something that is no longer for us and that no longer serves us in our life. And until we start building something new for ourselves, until we start building new buildings, building new relationships, building new goals, building new mindsets, building ourselves, like that old stuff will always be there. And until we start building something new, then we'll never be able to let go of it. But I feel like we fail to understand that that's like a daily practice. That's something that has to become a habit. That's something that has to become a lifestyle. I think we look at self-improvement as something that we can do one day and then we feel good and we no longer have to do it. Or, we expect ourselves to be healed within 2 weeks of staying in the gym. Everybody says go to the gym. Everybody says do this, do that. But it's like, if you don't stay consistent with these things for months, maybe even a year or so, then you'll never see any progress. You'll never see any change, because healing and getting over people, building a new life isn't something that happens overnight. It isn't something that's just a quick fix like we want it to be, because we look at our pain and we're like, I just want to stop feeling this way. And it's like, when we feel that pain for weeks, or we feel that pain for months, or, we just feel it for a long period of time, it makes it feel like, oh, it's going so slow, or, oh, things are taking forever, when really we haven't put in the time to truly see any type of change, to truly be able to let go of that path. But I also feel like a big motivator for myself was just, being excited for what the unknown held. I found that as I actually just started moving forward, that new opportunities started coming along. That as I gained the willingness to grow myself, start doing new things, start building, getting into new hobbies like content creation and stuff, opportunities just started to present themselves. I started getting followers on TikTok. I started, getting followers on Instagram and stuff like that. I started seeing success within my videos when I eventually shifted over to videos. But it was like, the more I started moving forward, the more I got opportunities, and life just started to unfold in ways in which I never saw it unfolding. I never saw myself making YouTube videos about this stuff. I never saw myself coaching people and, you know, helping people go through breakups and stuff like that. But, you know, be sure to check out my one-on-one coaching down below in the description. Now that I said that, but, you know, I never saw myself in this space and using my story and my past and my pain that I was going through at that time as something that I was going to be able to help others. And so it was like, in moving forward, I just started seeing how it was all necessary, seeing how it was all playing out, seeing how God needed me to go through those certain situations and meet those certain people and go through certain experiences and events with those people in order for me to step into the purpose that he had for me. But it was like, if I didn't have that unwillingness to start moving forward and, you know, being willing to see what would unfold, then this stuff wouldn't have unfolded. But I feel like also not allowing my past to become a limitation on myself. It's so easy to see your breakups and losing people and be like, oh, I must not be lovable. You know, it must mean this about me. It must mean that about me. It must mean I can't do this, or I can do that, or I am this, or I'm not that. And so it's so easy to look at your experiences, your results, your breakups, somebody deciding to leave your life, somebody not valuing you, and be like, oh, it must mean this, this, and this about me. And I feel like a big thing for me I had to realize was, you know, I gave a lot of my self-worth, a lot of my self-esteem to other people. I allowed other people to determine the opinion I had of myself. And I feel like in my breakups, in my losing people, in people deciding people's rejection towards me, it allowed me to become a lot clearer on who I was as a person, who Will is, regardless of other people's opinions and how other people decide to treat me, but understanding who I was to myself and getting so grounded in that to where other people can change that with their words or with their rejections or with, you know, them deciding to walk out of my life. And the last point I really want to make is just know who you are outside of your relationships. I feel like oftentimes, again, we make our relationships the center point of our life, our intimate relationships, where it's like, oh, this is everything going for me, or this is, you know, this is the end all be all, or like this is all that matters essentially. And I feel like you have to have your own life outside of your relationships, or it's so easy to lose yourself, because the moment your relationship goes away, then you go away, or the moment your relationship goes away, your purpose for life goes away. And I feel like it's just so important to understand both who you are and both like have your own goals for your personal self, regardless of what relationships you have going on, regardless of what the external world has going on with you. Have your own goals, have your own life, have your own purpose that will always be with you regardless of who is and who isn't in your life. But you know, I love and appreciate you guys as always. Be sure to leave comments down below on your thoughts on the video and some things you took away from it, as well as like and subscribe. And I'm gonna catch you guys on the next video. Peace.